Greetings, greetings, greetings. So, you're officially tuned into my show, Context Matters. And I am tuning in straight from Reggae Global Radio. So, you can see me on Reggae Global Radio. And naturally, I'm going to introduce the show and all of that. But just bear with me. It's my official launch of my show. Right. So, hope y'all good. Stay tuned. I'm telling you this. You're not gonna be disappointed. I'm gonna lay out what context matters, what it means, and I'll be interactive. So if you have a question, I'll be happy to answer the questions as we go along. So you're just chilling with ISAT for 2 hours on Reggae Global Radio, and of course on my YouTube live stream. And trust me, it's gonna be exciting. I want to start by saying I thank Reggae Global Radio for the opportunity to spread my knowledge, my energy, my vibe with the world at large, and more than anything, it's an honor to keep the public educated. The purpose of Context Matters is to pretty much have persons find a different perspective in the thought process, understanding that in the modern world where technology is everything short, everything fast, video clips at your fingertips, if you don't have the context, are you in a position to judge? Are you in a position to pass judgment? Are you in a position to pretty much put somebody's life in jeopardy, play judge, jury, and you know, pretty much say to somebody, we from a short clip have found you to be guilty of a crime. So that's the context. You want to be able to make mature consideration before passing judgment, before making decisions, and also it improves your ability to choose who your representatives are politically, to have an idea and an understanding of what it is that you believe in, what is your purpose in life. Those are the things that we are looking for when we think of context. So let's start first by defining context. And I'm as an Englishman myself, who just happened to be Jamaican, I want to say context, according to the Oxford Dictionary, would be the circumstances that form the setting for an event, statement, or idea, and in terms of which it can be fully understood. So, if we put that in context, one would say that the proposals need to be considered in the context of the new, let me use Jamaica, the new Jamaica directive. In Jamaica, there is a push to do away with the old constitution, um, break from the monarchy, and have become a republic. And so, in that context, we have to understand why it is that we want to move away from the monarchy. Is it feasible to move away? Are we replacing what we believe to be dictatorship and going into something that may be totalitarian, maybe has the concept or idea of communism? What context have they put, as in your lawmakers put, before you for you to accept that the context in which they wish to change the constitution is something you would accept? So if we were to expand context linguistically now, it is the semiotics, linguistics, sociology, and anthropology. Context also refers to those objects or entities which surround a focal event. In these disciplines, typically a communicative event of some kind. Context is a frame that surrounds the event and provides resources for its appropriate interpretation. So guess what? Jennifer, big up yourself. And everybody else who joined. I don't know why Jennifer pop out to me like that. Cynthia B, bless up as well. And everybody that is tuned into Context Matters with ISAT, you're rocking with the best. Now, listen, as we were speaking about the context, what we are saying is we always need appropriate interpretation, so that if your hand is caught in the cookie jar and somebody puts out on social media that your hand is caught in the cookie jar, you know, you have the social experts that comes out and say, yes, a thief, a wicked, lock him up, and go as far back as Moses' law and tells you, yes, your right hand in the cookie jar, chop it off. This without any context. What would be some of the context? Well, did you get permission for your hand to be in the cookie jar? Was the owner of the cookie jar aware that your hand was in the cookie jar? Did somebody own you? Do you have an interest? Have you inherited the cookie jar for you to be putting your hand in the cookie jar? Without knowing the facts, were you recovering items by a court order? Were you recovering items that belong to you? Without knowing the facts, can you say that this person was stealing and their hand was caught in the cookie jar? These are the questions and these are the contexts that will allow you to interpret. In legally, certainly in law, lawmakers, and certainly I maintain that judges are the only persons who are competent to pass judgment, whether judge of the fact, as in jurors, in that capacity, but to learn how to draw inescapable inferences. And inescapable inferences is a conclusion that you would have drawn from circumstances, and not fact, whether fact, from circumstantial evidence that would say this is the only conclusion that I could draw. Anything else would be a logical fallacy. And without understanding in its entirety what that is, you will find that people make decisions, people draw conclusions, hasty conclusions, and people pass judgment and you know, decide and make their own determinations on matters that they don't have the full facts and the full knowledge of. And it can cause a lot of hardship. Certainly in America, the Innocence Project is one of the hallmarks of justice. We don't yet have that in Jamaica for obvious reasons, but the Innocence Project is a great idea of appreciating that when you don't have all the facts, the context, evidential context, can cause persons to draw the wrong conclusions. And that is why, in that vein, context matters. Now, I know I just said a lot, and if you're just tuning in, we are talking about context matters. I'm going to spend most of the day, or the most of this period, this show, establishing context, contextualizing what the show is about, because we are going to have so many things happening in the public space all around the world, and we are biased and we take sides. We take our positions sometimes from loyalty, sometimes without knowing the facts, sometimes understanding that it's person sensitive. Person sensitive meaning if you don't like the person, you draw the judgment. If you like the person, you want to switch the judgment. And so without personalizing stuff and contextualizing. We stick to the facts. Yes, we stick to the facts and we stick to the issues, and we don't use what is known as ad hominem. Now, in another life, I would have attempted to explain ad hominem, and I think it was lost in the fray. So I'm going to take a second opportunity to talk about it in the context of this show. Ad hominem is a Latin phrase, and of course I don't speak Latin, so if I'm saying ad hominem wrong, it would be because that's not my language. But ad hominem means attacking the person. Now, attacking the person, what do we mean by that? It means when people do not have substance, when people cannot, in logic, follow your arguments, counter your arguments, they attack the person. It is a fallacy in law that allows a smokescreen. It allows persons to deflect from central and important issues. So let's try. You say that something is actually wrong, and you present your argument that it is unjust. Let me use my favorite thing. It is just simply inhumane. It is a breach of people's constitutional rights for any country, anywhere in the world, to call a state of emergency when there isn't martial law. In fact, states of emergencies are reserved for when the country is unable to function, when internally the country is in a war against itself, or during wartime. Similar, the Jamaican Constitution also particularly allows currently for states of emergency to be called in situations of natural disaster, which would be justified, and we would have experienced that during the COVID pandemic. Well, if we use that as a starting point or a place to define the context or the fallacy, well, when you say, listen, it is wrong, it is unconstitutional to be calling states of emergencies when the court says it's unconstitutional, as well as the idea, yes, as well as when you say it is unconstitutional and person says, oh, just shut up because we're doing what we're doing and we have to fight crime and stuff like that. Well, in that context, I want you to appreciate that when somebody tells you to shut up or say you don't know what you're talking, and they can use words to, they say, oh, your head big, you have no sense, or you if you smoke, you're a smoker, if you drink, you're drunk. And they use you. Sometimes they'll use your physical appearance and use the derogative words, which let me not use it, because when I use it, it might be taken out of context. But once they do that, that's when ad hominem comes in, and that's when people start to deflect from the central issue, which is our state of emergencies, state of public emergencies, unconstitutional. Well, there you go, and you appreciate what ad hominem is. And so with that, everything that's said behind attacking the person is totally out of context, because it pushes you away from the central issues. Good. Now, what would you say to those who would argue that you are giving legal advice? Well, I would say to them, they are taking it out of context. And here's how you know you take it out of context. I'm an educator. And as an educator, you're allowed to do just that. Educate. It would be offensive to my freedom of expression, which has already been breached in several arenas. And that would be my answer to that. Good evening and welcome. You are tuned in to Reggae Global Radio as well as my live stream. Context Matters is the show, and we are establishing in what context can we speak about context and why it matters. So, if you are living in a free and democratic society with constitutional rights, it is important that when you have thought process and you need to experience the freedom to make decisions for yourself, the freedom to express yourself, understanding that when you think of law and when you think of politics, everything that happens in life is law and politics. And if you believe in a higher power, you can stack on top of that religion and you have a nice sandwich that is known as the LPR, law, politics, and religion, and it expands. Now, shout out to everybody that's on the live stream. Shout out to everybody that's actually in the chat room. Big up yourself. As I said, I am working out the kinks with doing my multi-duties. So if I'm not calling you by name, that's because I probably can't find the chat room right now, or I'm looking at multiple chat rooms. So if you are on TikTok, if you are on the Reggae Global chat room, and if you are on YouTube, believe me, the love is there. I'm working it out, but just deal with it. Now, let's talk about, I am using philosophy to establish what I'm doing. And listen, bear with me. I promise you're going to learn something, and it's a much needed brain stimulation that probably you don't even want to have in the Yuletide season, but it's going to set the pace for how sharp you'll be in 2024. So we're leaving all of the fully dones behind in 2023, and we're uplifting and just totally transitioning to something much more dynamic, something that makes us just, superhuman. I promise you that. The mental gymnastics that come with this show is gonna change the way how you deal with, even if you go at the shop and you buy a patty. Mind you, this is where everybody gonna cuss me. If you ain't buying KFC, you ain't buying nothing. But that's just me, as a chicken man. But hear me. We're gonna talk about a particular philosopher. This is Plato, and he, in his Republic, which is a book. Ironically, Jamaica wants to be a republic. I am using Plato's cave, the allegory of the cave, or just call it Plato's cave, to demonstrate the importance of context matters. Listen, let me tell you something. The comment section is lit. I'm not leaving nobody behind. I'm gonna behave like I don't even know who Bro God is. Blessings, everybody. Now watch me. Just work with me. We're gonna go slow, and we're gonna make sure that we have a new understanding of why context matters. So this is the allegory of the cave by Plato, a philosopher, a Greek philosopher at that, and it was translated by Sean Eyre. Now, just context. Plato's famous allegory of the cave was written around 380 BCE, and it's one of the most important and influential passages of the Republic, which is his works. It vividly illustrates, and I want you to conceptualize what I'm doing here, because this is exciting stuff, I promise you. Now, it illustrates the concept of idealism as it was taught in the Platonic Academy. Now, it provides metaphor, which philosophers have used for millennia to help us overcome superficiality and materialism. Now, in this dialogue, Socrates, who taught Plato, he is the main speaker. And he explains to Plato's brother, Glaucon, and no, this isn't Dragon Ball Z, so don't mix it up with Goku and all of this all of this stuff. So Glaucon is Plato's brother, and he goes through what we all resemble. And so he's saying we all resemble captives who are chained deep within a cavern. I want you to visualize this in your mind, because this is how we're going to get to it. And he says, we don't realize that there is more to reality than the shadows they are seen against a wall. No. If you have that visualization, think of being, if you are in Jamaica or wherever you're living, that's all you know. So culture comes into the space. So you have culture, and the culture is defined by the being chained together deep in a cavern, in a cave. There's a fire, of course, and the light, all we see is shadows on the wall. None of us can see outside. None of us know that the world is bigger than what we know. And that's why the perfect example is the island, the nice little Tolowa island of Jamaica. Now Socrates starts, and this is dialogue now. So if I sound like I'm like I have multiple personalities, is because I'm going back and forth with this. Now hold on. Yes. Now Socrates says, and now allow me to draw a comparison in order to understand the effect of learning. So this is about education. What is the quality of education that we are getting? And we're not just talking about textbook. We're talking about being educated to interact in life, or the lack thereof. So how do we understand the effect of learning on our nature? How we interact with each other is based on what we learn. So if we not learn nothing, naturally we're fully done. If you agree with me, you just let me know you agree. And if you disagree, you tell me why, and we can dialogue, we can debate on it, and put context behind the argument. Now, imagine that there are people living in a cave deep underground. So we're setting the stage now. The cavern has a mouth that opens to the light above, and a passage exists from this all the way down to the people. So they have lived here from infancy with their legs and necks bound in chains. They cannot move. All they can do is stare directly forward, like they have blinders, like when a horse is racing, as the chain stop them from turning their heads around. Now imagine that far above and behind them blazes a great fire. Big up yourself if you're just joining. You tune in with ISAT, Context Matters. So between this fire and the captives, a low partition is erected along a path, and something like puppeteers used to conceal themselves during their shows, right? So let me know if you can picture it before I move on, because if I did a bad job trying to explain it like Socrates did, I'm going to need to know that. So I'm going to pause for effect, and somebody let me know. Do you picture that cave? Do you picture the settings? All right. Now, for those of you who miss it, let me go again. Imagine there are people living in a cave deep underground, and the cavern has a mouth that opens to the light above, and a passage that exists from this all the way down to the people. So the light is coming from above. Now, they have lived here from infancy. So if you picture Jamaica, you're born and grow up Jamaica, or wherever you are in the world, picture that place, and you're born there in that community, and you never left. Your legs and your necks are bound in chains. So you're sitting and you move. You're like this, captive. They cannot move. All they can do is stare directly forward. Can't look left or right. And imagine that far above and behind them blazes a great fire. Between this fire and the captives, a low partition is erected along a path, and something like puppeteers used to conceal themselves during their shows. Now, can you picture that? Yes, when we're talking about Plato's allegory of the cave, this is important. All right, so your imagination's supposed to be pumping. You're supposed to be saying, I'm visualizing something that I didn't have to go on social media to see because my mind still works. My eyes are closed and I'm seeing the cave and the fire. If you're doing that, you're with me. Now, Glaucon said he could imagine it. So you guys are Glaucon and I am Socrates. So when we get there, you'll tell me if you actually are following just as he did. Now, look, and you will also see other people carrying objects back and forth along the partition. Now, things of every kind, images of people and animals carved in stone and wood and other materials. Some of these other people speak while others remain silent. Now, let me give you some context. Because Glaucon says it's a bizarre situation for some unusual captives. But again, some of these people are able to speak and others remain silent. In that little discourse, you can see how freedom of expression is limited to, certainly in some countries, the elite class are the only people who are allowed to speak without repercussions or without punishment or sanctions. So freedom of expression can be limited, but what is important is there is observation. But if everybody is like crab in a barrel and they have never left, governance is still going to be formed and some people is going to think they know it's all. So it is indeed a bizarre situation. Now Socrates go on and says, so we are. Now, tell me, if you suppose it's possible that these captives ever saw anything of themselves or one another other than the shadows fitting across the cavern wall before them, that's a rhetorical question, because if your head just right in front of you, can't look left and can't look right, you not see nothing and you don't know nothing but shadows on the wall. So the human mind, as Glaucon says, is certainly not, for they are restrained all their lives with their heads facing forward only. So keep the visual. Greetings, if you're just joining, you're watching Context Matters with ISAT. Right? You're rocking with the best, I promise you. Yeah. Now, Socrates goes on to say, and that would be just as true for the objects moving to and from behind them. So guess what? If all we're seeing is shadows, we don't know the reality. We can only rely on those who think they know it all to tell us all that we ought to know. And as soon as you try to break the status quo, you are the wicked one. You are the evil one. You are everything that is bad because you're breaking the norm. That is really where we're at, breaking the norm, and we have to put context behind it. So in this situation, shadows on the wall could never represent the reality, but it is some form of reality. I won't even call it virtual reality. I will call it the shadow reality, and that is something that we have to think about when we're dealing with matters. What is the reality that we are dealing with? Good afternoon, good evening, all that is here. Big up yourself. Now, if they could speak, would you say that these captives would imagine that the names they give to the things they were able to see applied to real things? Think about it. Because with shadows on the wall and you're always inside, over time as you grow, if you've been sitting there from infancy, your eyes adapt and your imagination only works. So if you see a drunko fly past and you say, oh, that's an eagle, doesn't change that is a drunko, and you don't know it's a drunko, or it's a chicken, or it's a duck, whatever it is. But once the shadow comes across the wall and the most superior person guess what it is, everybody follows suits, and the norm start to say that's what it is, and whatever they call it, that's what it is, even if it even if that is not the case, and you have to correct that. That is what is important in terms of, if you find the right context, you are going to correct the simplicities of what was there before. And change is not something that is easy to make when there are persons who are comfortable, especially those who are comfortable with ignorance, and use that as a tool to mentally oppress people who have greatness inside of them. Glaucon says it would have to be so. Then Socrates goes on and says, and if a sound reverberated through their cavern from one of those others passing behind the partition, do you suppose that the captives would think anything but the passing shadows was what really made the sound? So their mind is limited and their context is limited, and that is of great importance. Right. And in the future, I will put the link to the YouTube and the link to the TikTok and everywhere you can see me for those of you who are trying to find it. But Reggae Global Radio is where you are, so we can listen and we can vibe. All right. Now, if a sound reverberated through the cavern from one of those other passing behind the partition, do you suppose that the captives would think anything but the passing shadows was what really made the sound? I'm repeating that for effect because Glaucon says no, by Zeus. In other words, obviously they would know what made the sound, but they would have to think what it is that made the sound. Now, he goes on to say, then undoubtedly such captives would consider the truth to be nothing but the shadows of the carved object. So here's where context matters. If you don't know nothing else, your truth is what you're going to know. Your morality, no matter how limited, no matter how archaic, no matter how restricted it is what you are going to continue to try to maintain. And the status quo, even if it doesn't fit you. For instance, there are things that culturally we would find offensive that takes place in other societies. If we adopt them, persons will find it a bit offensive, repugnant, whichever word you choose. But what is important is that if you find the context, find the culture, there's a great saying, when in Rome, you do as the Romans do. That pretty much assists you in appreciating the context that I'm making reference to. So your truth will only be as you know it. So if you have a limited understanding of the world at large, unlimited knowledge, then you will never be able to say that your truth expands any further than the little that you know. So you would have to, in all contexts, know your truth, own your truth, or where your truth, where it lies. And that is just the reality. Now, try this. Look again and think about what would happen if they were released from these chains and these misconceptions. Imagine one of them is set free from his shackles and immediately made to stand up and behind and bend his neck around to take steps, to gaze up towards the fire. And all of this was painful, and the glare from the light made him unable to see the object that cast the shadows he once beheld. Well, what do you think his reaction would be if someone informed him that everything he had formerly known was an illusion and delusion, but that now he was a few steps closer to reality, oriented now towards things that were more authentic and able to see more truly? And even further, if one would direct his attention to the artificial figures passing to and fro and ask him what their names are, would this man not be at a loss to do so? That's a question. Would he rather believe that the shadows he formerly knew were more real than objects now being shown to him? Well, that's an answer for something for you to think on. But I would invite you to adopt Glockin's approach and say it's much more real. Yes? So if all that you would have known, and I always say this in the context of where you are. I'm from Jamaica, so I can only think of the Jamaican context. I like to think I'm the man that got up out of the restrictive nature of what we knew, which was shadows on the wall, gone out into the world and see that the world is much larger, the world is much bigger, the world is culturally dynamic. All that we think is happening is not so, and the world is really one global melting pot, and those whose mind can expand and appreciate cultural differences can see life differently. And how that person fits into a society that remains primitive or a society that remains stagnant, not because they don't want better, but because those who are put to advance the society would prefer to keep you suppressed so that they can rule over those who are has less aptitude. I'll put it that way. Well, Socrates goes on to say, now if he was forced to look directly at the firelight, wouldn't his eyes be pained? Wouldn't he turn away and run back to those things which he normally perceived and understand them as more defined and clearer than the things now being brought to his attention? That's a good question, because the answer to that has to be yes. If you don't want to wave back, Laurie, behave yourself. The comments are always lit. All right, now let's say that he is forcibly dragged up the steep climb out of the cavern and firmly held until finally he stands in the light of the sun. Don't you think that he would be agitated and even begin to complain? Well, under that light, would his eyes not be nearly blinded, unable to discern any of those things that we ourselves call real? Well, he wouldn't be able to see them at first, is what Glaucon says. And naturally, Socrates goes on to say that it would basically take time. And I suppose for him to get used to seeing higher things. In the beginning, he might only trace the shadows, then the reflections of people and other things in the water. Next, he would come to see the things themselves. And then he would hold the heavenly bodies and the heaven itself by night, seeing the light of the stars and the moon with greater ease than the sun and its lights by day. So he's becoming enlightened and he's seeing things in the real time rather than the perceived time. And Socrates goes on to say, and then I think he would at last be able to gaze upon the sun itself when his eyes is adjusted, and neither as reflected in water nor as a phantom image in some other place, but in its own place as it really is. So somebody who starts to see in reality is not denied. So undeniably, the man who used to look at shadows on the wall, as he's enlightened, he's going to see life in a different context. He's going to see life from a different perspective. His mind, his thought process, his ideals, his realism will change ultimately by this transition, this experience. And now he will begin to reason, and you will find that the sun is the source for the seasons and the years and governor of every visible thing, and is ultimately the origin of everything previously known. That's right, Cynthia B. So true. Now, Laurie, what's your thoughts on that? All right. Well, Socrates goes on to say, that being the case, bless up, bless up, bless up, Jeremy. Big up yourself. Gaza Star. Here, Art. I see you. I see you active in the comments. Continue to share the live. Continue to tune in to Reggae Global Radio. You can hop over to the YouTube as well, and we can interact more easier. Just keep it coming, and your questions, I'll answer them as I see them. I promise you. Now, that being the case, should he remember his fellow prisoners and their original dwelling and what was accepted as wisdom in the settings? Don't you imagine he would consider himself fortunate for this transformation and feel pity for the captives? So you see, once a man now becomes enlightened, let me put it this way, persons who are naturally persons who get to leave their country of origin and go to other countries, they always get a new perspective and a new enlightenment. And when they return to their country, they share their experiences. People go to Dubai, people who in Jamaica go to America or go to the UK, go to Canada, go even Africa, go other Caribbean islands. They see that travel makes a difference in the way they think, in the way they process life, and the way they understand and interpret culture. And so the captives who remain there will have a different sense of reality, would have a different sense of humanness. Because if you're in a country where human rights is non-existent, and you go somewhere and there is actually human rights and there is public law and order, you will have a different feeling and a different sense. And when you return to where you are, you'll say, but this doesn't feel right. What's happening here is it's not right. It doesn't feel right to me. And then you will object to the status quo, and it will become a problem. And you will realize that you would consider yourself fortunate for your transformation. And you start to say, well, it's not my fight, I pity. But really the question to ask, is it your fight? And one would agree that while you feel sorry for your countrymen, it sets the stage for what it sets the stage for how you advocate for enlightening and the education system, wanting to change and wanting to improve education for everybody. Good? Now, suppose there were honors and awards among the captives, which they granted as prizes to one another for being the best at recognizing the various shadows passing by or deciphering their patterns, their order, and the relationships among them, and therefore best at predicting what shadows would be seen next. Do you believe that our liberated man would be much concerned with such honors, or that he would be jealous of those who receive them, or that he would strive to be like those who were lauded by the captives and enjoyed pride of place among them? Or would rather take home Homer's view and rather wish in earthly life to be the humble serf of a landless man, and that's the Odyssey, and suffer whatever he had to, instead of holding the views of the captives and returning to the state of being. So that's a really, 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 really that's a really hard. That's when you're caught between a rock and a hard place. Do you go back to being delusional, or do you decide that you want to elevate? Do you decide that you want change? Do you want to be the great liberator? Do you want to be the Moses that returns and delivers his people out of the promised land? That's a contextual reality that has to be considered. What Glaucon says, and remember, we're dealing with the allegory of the cave, Plato's cave, and it's a conversation between Socrates and Glaucon, Plato's brother. Glaucon says, truly he would rather suffer a great deal than return to such a life. And that's really the essence of life. Having having discovered that there is greater to life, why would one want to return to a basic semitone kind of life, a semitone type standard of living? Why would anybody want to revert to meaningless and pointless existence when they know that there's greater out there? So some people would be like, well, I should just stay and get my award. And then one would wonder, one would then wonder if it would make sense to actually accept that and go and collect the awards, and because you know what the shadows are, you guess and you try to interpret, and you come and say, hey, let's change the game, let's throw out the old game and change it so it fits us, like how they want to just change the constitution and not give people the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding of what it is that they're doing. So Cynthia B says, it sounds like Harriet Tubman. She could have freed more slaves only if they knew they were slaves. That's a good analogy. That's a good example, I should say, because if you don't know that you're living in bliss, or that you are living in a clouded, delusional reality, you're going to be very loyal. You're going to have loyalty to people who treat you nice because you think that's what nice is. But you would never appreciate that there's more out there. So you'll be stuck in your existence. That is just one reality. Now, the next thing to think of is blessings, Peter. Blessings, Yvette. Big up yourself, Peaches. Big up everybody in the chat room. Cynthia, respect. Now, Socrates said, well, here's something else to consider. If such a man would suddenly go from the sunlight to one more descend to his original circumstances, wouldn't his vision be obscured by the darkness? So he'd be going back, starting over, and his eyes wouldn't be able to adapt, and he would be at a disadvantage. So it's almost like you've become superior, or you've become a little bit more wiser, and you're now forced to still behave as if you're dumb, and you're too dumb. You can't dumb yourself down so that you can't even function, and you'll be at a disadvantage. And Socrates says, let's say he is with the captives and gets put into the position of interpreting the wall shadows. His eyes are still adjusting to the darkness, and it may take a while before they are. And wouldn't he become a laughing stock? Wouldn't they say, you have returned from your adventure up there with ruined eyes? Would they not say that the ascent was a waste of time? And if they had the opportunity, do you suppose that they might raise their hands against him and kill this person who is trying to liberate them to a higher plane? And the reality is, Glaucon says, I'm afraid so. So the very people that you want to liberate, the very people that you try to educate, the very people that you try to uplift may very well say, why would I want you to uplift me? And you don't know what you do, or you don't have any sense, or they cannot appreciate the context in which you are delivering a message or giving education. And it is in that vein that it becomes a little problematic. So, guys, I'm going to speak a few more. It's almost at the top of the hour. And if you tune into Reggae Global, commercials will be at the top of the hour. Don't go nowhere. I will be here, but just know that we're going to break for some commercials at the top of the hour. It's now 2:48, so we can go a little bit more. Socrates says, then my friend Glaucon, this image applies to everything we've been discussing. It compares the visible world to the underground cavern and the power of the sun to the fire that burned in the cavern. You won't misunderstand me if you connect the captive's ascent to be the ascent of the soul to the intelligible world. This is how I believe and I shared it at your wish, though heaven knows whether it is at all true. Regardless, it appears to me that in the realm of what can be known, the idea of the good is discovered last of all, and it is only perceived with great difficulty. But when it is seen, it leads us directly to finding that it is the universal cause of all that is right and beautiful. So it is the source of visible light and the master of the same. And in the intelligible world, it is the master of truth and reason. And whoever in private or in public would behave in a sensible way will keep this idea in focus. You see that? Now, guess what? Glaucon agrees, and he goes to the extent I can manage to understand. So you might disagree with me, but it may be to the extent that you understand or if what I'm saying makes sense. Now, for those of you who are just joining and you don't know that we're talking about Plato's cave, you might say, but all of this talking don't make no sense. That is because you would have already missed the context, and I would have to invite you to go and rewatch the show or re-listen to the audio stream on Reggae Global Radio so that you can get the context before you pass judgment. And so when it is that it says, he who has ears, let them hear or let them listen. And when you listen, hope that you hear. Because if you walk into a conversation without knowing the context, or you see just a snippet of what people are speaking of, you may very well miss the context and the judgment that you pass. It will sound like, oh, this is boring, or what is them do right here, so this we really tune in for. That's the idea, or that's the essence of what we want to change by educating ourselves, by trying to appreciate the context. And those who are interested will stay. You will go into room and spaces to say, I don't have the full context. You want to educate me, enlighten me, somebody bring me up to speed so that I can be able to join in the conversation. It's like those who, if you ever go into a school, it can be primary school, preschool, secondary, or even university. If you're late registration, the first thing that your teachers tell you need to do is catch up. And sometimes if you fail to catch up, the exam is going to just get by you. And it's not that you don't, it's not that you don't have no sense. It's just that you miss the context, you miss the fabric, and even knowledge. Words on a page may be just words on a page. And remember, the person who is marking the exam is the educator, the teacher. If you don't go to the lectures and listen to what the teacher is saying, your life may be just harder because you won't know what it is that the examiner is passionate about for you to engage the examiner. And then you say, oh, I don't get an A. That's because you never interacted with the person who is educating you. Cynthia B says, enlightenment is key, and one has to be in touch with oneself to know that he or she is being enlightened. Well, that's exactly the concept of what Socrates was trying to get to, identifying what is the greater good. Well, if you stay with me, Socrates says, then for another thought, we should not be surprised that individuals who have reached this level might be unwilling to spend their time on mundane affairs. For would it not be that their souls always feel a calling to the higher things? And if our illustration holds true, that would seem quite likely. And you must agree with that. Big up yourself, Rashi. Let's. Good afternoon to you and welcome to the stream. Welcome to you tune into Reggae Global Radio. Commercials at the top of the hour. So don't go nowhere now because we almost reached the top of the hour. But that is where we are at. And remember, you tune into context matters. So we're giving context to the conversation. If you are enlightened, you will always be searching for the higher calling, higher things, and the mundane things, you would think that people would get it already, but it's not so. If people can't understand context, when you're having conversations with them, it's going to be a difficult feat to be able to get persons to appreciate what you are saying, or the knowledge that you're putting out, because of the context. And you may find yourself in a lot of trouble speaking their language, because those around, those other persons, may not appreciate the context. So now we would be at all surprising for one who has been engaged in the contemplation of holy things, when he ventures into ways of degenerate humanity, to appear ridiculous in his actions. Now, I'm going to repeat that. Would it be at all surprising for one who has been engaged in the contemplation of holy things, when he ventures into ways of degenerate humanity, to appear ridiculous in his actions? Now, here it is that big up yourself, Yvette Gordon, Team ISAT all the way. Now, let me repeat it. Would it at all be surprising for one who has been engaged in the contemplation of holy things, when he ventures into ways of degenerate humanity, to appear ridiculous in his actions? So you see, you may find yourself in a culture where society treats the least among us as subhumans. This is a true construct, and why context matters. If you're not treating the least among you as humans, as equal beings, equitable treatment for all, they are being treated as degenerate humans. And so you live in a society with degenerate humanity, and anything that you say, including giving equality to all, may seem ridiculous or appear to be ridiculous. And anything you say will be shrouded in bias and hate for you. So what is it? For example, while his eyes were still adjusting to the mundane gloom, he would be forced to appear in court to hold forth about the mere shadows of justice, or the other shapes that flittered across the wall, and to engage in debate. So he'd be put on trial, and about such concepts with the minds of others who has never beheld the ideal justice. So you are then put to be judged by persons who have no concept of the ideal justice. And that is the context. And so you're placed to be judged by persons who are shrouded with bias and nepotism, and who deals with inequality, and deal with hatred, and deal with suppression and oppression. The ideal justice eludes them because they have no concept of it, because they live with their reality's degenerate humanity. Glaucon says, it would not surprise me the least. That's the first thing he says. And Socrates goes on to say, but one who has his wits about him would remember that there are two things that pain the eyes: being brought from darkness to light, and transitioning back from the light to darkness. Reversion. The latter being the worst. Now, considering that the soul experiences the same discomfort, this man would not make light of another when he's met with a confused soul. He would take the time to understand if that soul was coming from a luminous realm and his eyes were blinded by darkness, or whether the journeying from the darkness of ignorance into an illuminated state had overwhelmed his eyes. One, he would consider fortunate, or he would pity the other. And if he laughed at either, it would be less justified if he laughed at the expense of one who was descending from the light above. And so, while persons are judging you without context, you have to pity them for not knowing whether they're judging you justified because of their degenerate humanity, or they're judging because they don't understand that you are descending, having ascended. And so in either way, the idea and concept of justice has eluded them because they have no context at which to work from. Now, Glaucon says that's a fitting way for us to put it. Now, we're going to take the commercial break in less than a minute. So I don't want to go way ahead of myself. I want to engage. So if you have questions, just put them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. But we're trying to establish, and I'm taking the time to establish what it is we mean by context matters and how we can elevate from being bamboozled, from being pressured to judge from biased places, because those who are put to represent, those who are put to educate, sometimes those who are put in positions of authority come from a place of degenerate humanity, and that the context eludes them of what is natural justice, what is morality, and what is real justice. As Socrates would have put it, ideal justice. So let me take some of these conversations, some of these questions if you have them. And like I say, it's my first show. I'm gonna always say you're rocking with the best. ISAT. Context matters. Yes, blessings, Pablo, legendary. Love Jahu, big up yourself. Trudy, Kane, Paul Clark, Zambo. I see you, my brother. Yeah, honey. I'm gonna repeat what the format is, but as I said, the show is about context matters, putting social issues, current affairs into the proper context, speaking about whether we have the information to pass the necessary judgment into everything, trying to contextualize, trying to interpret, and putting things in the proper perspective so that we can have those conversations. That's what this show is about. We're gonna incorporate guests, and we're gonna talk about serious issues such as freedom of expression, which I'm trying to I'm using that in this context for this show to explain what context matters mean, and also in speaking about rehabilitation. Everybody knows that not everybody, I'm not gonna assume I'm very passionate about rehabilitation. I'm very passionate about equality. I'm very passionate about eradicating poverty as a solution to end crime, especially in the Jamaican space, because that's where I am from. That's what my vision for a better Jamaica is, to eradicate poverty, and that would be a serious answer to the crime problem. I don't believe that the nature of the crime in the Jamaican space is just because people want to commit crimes, but it's because of a lack of access to a better life, especially when you tune into the Instagrams, the TikTok, the internet. When you see what's happening in the social space and you live in your reality, these things can compromise your ability. And also that you live in a society where people the need to be better than the next person, causes people to close doors and opportunities and access to a better life for the masses, which causes crime to be the way it is, because people know, almost like I'm talking about Plato's cave. People are enlightened, and they now know in 2023, moving into 2024, that better is out there and they want better. And as a result, we have to bring to the table opportunities for people to experience a better life. That's what that is about. So that's what this show is about. And respect to everybody that's telling me happy belated birthday. I didn't say in drive, I didn't say seven craves, I didn't see no KFC pop up at my yard. I drove to several different branches and I checked at the drive-through to see if anybody left any KFC gift certificates for me. None of that, because people don't want me get me KFC. That's how I feel. But no, I go war, no, I go war with people, but they just don't make it happen again next year. Yeah, so let me see if I can access. Like I say, I working through the kinks. Let me see if I can get access to the other comments, so that I can interact a little bit more. So bear with me. We're getting there. We're getting there. And yeah, as this is our show for the people, by the people, I just want to say, everybody laughing at me about my KFC. You know, it's the truth. I just speak I speak the truth. Ask me no questions, I tell you no lie. And also to say, oh, see it? Yes, yes, yes. Big up yourself. Tisha Brown, Carlin, Maria, Sassy, Nikki Fire, Nadia, Rebel, Dion, Anne Marie, Reggae Global Radio. The team is treating me. Listen, I feel like royalty. I must tell you that. I really feel like royalty. The love is overwhelming. You know, when you feel like you're smiling because of the love, when you see the outpouring of love, you know that there's a space for you in the world. That is what people need in the world. You know, like I said, what the world needs now is love, sweet love. Boy, I sound like we can out sing Big Youth, you know. But I know him listen, so I'm gonna quit while me ahead. Yeah, Nikki Fire. I see that you understand the concept. I find, you know, I tell you, I'm a fast learner, you know, put it in context, you know, and I can't stop me now, you know, when they're in the chat room, my boss, Annette, Arins, Joe Blogs, Petro E. See, my calling out, you know. I see y'all. Carol, big up every time. Yeah, so if you have your questions for me, let me know. And I see you, Case, Cynthia, Donna Brown. I see y'all you find your way over to the YouTube. Appreciate the love. It's one step at a time. I advertise it and things like that, you know. It's just only never bribe me with the KFC. That's why I never put out the broadcast the way I'm supposed to. But I will be context matters. Probably when I'm in a different space, I might have a little bit of an accent next week, and you might try to catch up with me. You know how it is. And I'm here to answer your questions, and we'll put things in proper context. All right, 3:07, top of the hour. We're going into hour number 2. See, show almost done already, you know, and you know, things I'm just chat too much, and that's another, you know. But it's almost like, even though this is Reggae Global and I still have a top of the screen, I share the likes. Let me stop. I'm gonna not get Elon Musk no advertising, but I tell you this, I'm always proud of my Starlink. It never fails. Like, how can you exist without Starlink? That's a shot at Rattigan. Big up yourself. All right, so we're using the allegory of the cave, written by Plato many years ago. Big up yourself, Lala, Nickel Green. Nickel Green, who tell you that? Don't believe everything you read in the news. We're gonna talk about that at the top of the year, when closer to the time, and you'll see. Watch the magic happens. All right. Yeah. Now back to the allegory of the cave. We were talking about degenerate humanity. I know me says so, Socrates says so, but just know this, just to put things in context. Socrates went through a trial. He was put to death, and he drank hemlock. So usually when you're enlightened, they're gonna want to crucify you. Jesus was not the first person to be crucified by the people around him for for being righteous, for doing right for his people. That's so important. If you want to talk to me off the air, send me a message. I respond to my messages, but when you send me the messages, it can't just be hi. It have to be a little bit more substance. Put it in context so we can have a conversation. All right. So big up yourself, Davion. I'm seeing your messages, and yeah. Now, here's what Socrates says, having discovered enlightenment and the luminous realms and the greater good. Big up yourself, Dickie Fire and Precious. I see y'all. Here we're going with the greater good. He said, therefore, of this matter itself, there must be a craft of some kind, which would be a most efficient and effective means of transforming the soul. It would not be an art that gives the soul vision. It's a craft that labor under the assumption that the soul has its own innate vision, but does not apply it properly. There must be some kind of means for bringing this about. And Glaucon, as he learns, he says, yes, such a craft must exist. And that right there, my people, is the allegory of the cave by Plato. So I'm going to say the last part of it again. In fact, just for those of you who just joined, let's put this thing in context. Edwin, I see you, hands up, ask your question. And again, Mika, thank you so much for the birthday greetings, the belated birthday. Yeah, it was a beautiful birthday. The release of my song, All in Life. Shout out to Vibes Cartel. And the man released it himself and give me a wonderful push. And the Reggae Global family, listen, them rinse this song on the radio, them play the big version, the acoustic version. Let me tell you, I never feel the love like I feel right now. All things come together for the greater good. So sometimes people wish bad for you, but they really putting the wind beneath your wings. You know, that kind of way, that kind of feeling. So you have to be empowered. Yeah. I'm not going to get religious in this one. We're not going to do that today, but that is how it is. So yes, appreciate everybody for all the birthday wishes, belated and all the love, and it's exciting. I think the 12th of the 12th is so significant for me because so many things happen. I'm born on that day. I turn a lawyer on that day. My big song get released on that day. It's just snippets in time, and yeah, that's God at work, and it happens like that. Now we want to look at this, and here it is. I need to go back to this. And what's Keisha? Why are you giving me eyes? All right. So Socrates says this: if I am correct, then some of our educators are mistaken in their view that it is possible to implant knowledge. Let me say this again. If I am correct, our educators are mistaken in their view that it is possible to implant knowledge into a person that wasn't there originally, like vision into the eyes of a blind man. And Glaucon says that's what they say. Now, Del Cita, big up yourself. Socrates ends, or getting close to the end, says what our message now signifies is that the ability and means of learning is already present in the soul. I want you to listen to this, The ability and means of learning is already present in the soul, as the eye could not turn from darkness to light unless the whole body moved. So it is that the mind can only turn around from the world of becoming to that of being by a movement of the whole soul. So the soul must learn by degrees to endure the contemplation of being and the luminous realms. This is the good. Do you agree? And Glaucon agrees. So when you hear the eyes of the wind are the windows to the soul, put in context again. If you only see 3 seconds of something that happened in 10 hours, do you have the requisite context to pass the judgment you need to pass? Can you say just and be justified in any judgment you pass other than saying, I do not have enough context to pass judgment? That is the seminal issue of why context matters, because we like to rush things, and justice rush is justice crushed. And every time in life, it never fails. When those who say they are doing justice allow you to rush justice, they are crushing justice. All right. The last of it is this. Therefore, of this matter itself, there must be a craft of some kind, which would be a most efficient and effective means of transforming the soul. It would not be an art that gives the soul vision, but a craft at labor under the assumption that the soul has its own innate vision, but does not apply it properly. There must be some kind of means for bringing this about. And Glaucon says, yes, such a craft must exist. And I am submitting to my listeners and my viewers that the craft that Socrates was speaking of in his dialogue with Glaucon, who is Plato's brother, is context. If we study the art of contextualizing anything, making interpretation using the proper context, we will never do harm to people. And ideal justice is what we look for. Ideal justice is what the Constitution in every country has contemplated when it thinks about giving rights to the people, regardless of your religion, regardless of your identity, regardless of your hair, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of anything that one can conceive to place you in a minority class, to give effect to your humanness and rid a nation of being of suffering from degenerate humanity, which places some of its citizens into what is known as a status. So the treatment is meted out against some will be worse. It will be excessive and it will be unjustified because they see you as a subhuman, because they see you as a degenerate human being to feel better about themselves. But that is the context in which this show will deal with all matters. And I tell you, next year is going to be an exciting one, because morality and integrity, certainly in the Jamaican space, will be on front stage in all matters. I'm telling you. Big up yourself, Cynthia B. K-Sue, Stacey Hall, I see you. Same thing. Lorna Bennett, big up yourself. Wauchi, Adwin, West George. So we will definitely talk about that. Artens, I see you. Precious, Nikki Fire. All who tune in right now. Rebel, big up yourself. And for those who saying they switch to Starlink, you just tell Elon Musk that is me bigging up Starlink so that him can come and give me some endorsement and run some ads on my program. So Reggae Global can be proud of me. And yeah, just tell KFC for run my 6-piece. So we can't survive without it. I wouldn't put it on the chicken. Anyway, so I want to engage with the question. I want to answer some questions, because having gone through the whole allegory of the cave, and this comes from Plato and his Republic, is philosophy. It at first glance it seems like heavy stuff, but I'm gonna tell you, big up yourself, Marlene McKenzie. straight out of Trinidad and Tobago. I tell you, we're large, we're global. That's why we call ourselves Reggae Global. That's what it's about. But as I say, want to be able to expand on that. Big up yourself, Conley McCarthy. And yes, Delcita Stewart says Jamaica is that cave and they crucified who tried to escape and educate themselves. Well, Bob Marley said, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Took that from Selassie. But excellently written, put together, put in song form, repetition is the tool, the education piece, so that lest we forget its importance. Carol is promising Miss KFC and distracting me, but we must stay focused. We must not think about 6-piece. And so to expound on what Delcita Stewart has said is, if we think of Jamaica as the cave, and think about what has been put on the table for Vision 2030, I can tell you now, we're not going to reach or achieve first world status by 2030. In fact, whoever wins the next election will certainly say that they're abandoning that unrealistic reality. They're going to step out of the cave and see that many other things, the wrongs and the ills that is on the society, the degenerate humanity that exists in Jamaica is perfectly aligned to Plato's description of the allegory of the cave. In a perfect world, Marshall, greetings, cute Prue, greetings. In a perfect world, one would get the opportunity to be unshackled. The concept of being unshackled would be the ability to walk up to the embassy, any of them, and say, I want a little travel, regardless of the location of your address, and you're free as long as you have your money to travel to wherever you are, expound, visit, see the world, and come back and tell your brothers and sisters of that which is out there. Why the diaspora is so important to the existence of Jamaica, especially this time of year. And I'm pitching it now because I know that they're going to send about 4 barrels with my name on it. And I know Queenie tell me, say she's going to listen to me today, and I don't see she messaged me. But Queenie would have say, yes, bad barrel. Send me some bad barrel. Me need it. And so the diaspora, how important it is. But just remember, they are in this narrative, the allegory of the cave. They have transcended. They have unshackled themselves from the restrictions, that is the chains around the neck and the chains on the feet, and they have stepped out of the cave. Their eyes have moved on, and they are out in the world doing great things. Some of them have become judges, movie stars, actors, runners, great businessmen and women, and have sent back contributions. They're big in law enforcement, FBI agents, CIA, space. They do everything everywhere in the world. We lick about with Talawa, but it is they, and we are always proud of them. And we want that for those who are in the Jamaican space, and knowing that no matter your address, no matter where you come from, there was a song, The World is a Ghetto by War. Well, Jamaica is a ghetto, but Jamaica have people with the most amazing talent. There's so few of us in the world. Every Jamaican is a star. Teeth my father words. I won't use the N word, but all of us are stars. All of us in our own right has the ability to we have the ability to just do greatness if we are given the opportunity. And the thing about it is, we are a generation lost, identity not found, but we find ourselves with amazing talents, evident that we are descendants of the people of God. So some of us, those who can't run, can jump, those who can jump can DJ, those who can DJ can sing. Some of us have multiple talents. Some of us are brilliant, brilliant minds, bright, bad, bright. Yeah. Anytime you hear me put bad in front of something, that's me telling you, say you're whole heap, bright and intelligent. That kind of energy, that kind of idealism, realism, that we need to get up out of that to change where we are, the context in which we live. Currently, Jamaica is the cave, and the people are restricted, and we need to, and I'm saying we need to emancipate ourselves from the allegory of that cave, from using shadows on the wall. Big up yourself early. And that is the idea that we're looking for when we say context matters. We must put everything into context. So I invite you, send me messages and tell me topics that you would like to talk about. Tell me of a conversation that was put out into the media that was not given its proper context. I can tell you, you surf the internet daily. It has become a part of our culture. It has become a part of our reality. Once you have a smartphone in your hand, you get an appreciation of what I'm talking about. my daughter won. You're not gonna make me say it, so don't do me that. I love you too. Petro, Carol, Rebel. Appreciate all of you for stopping by and just keeping it interactive. Del Cita, you're really championing the discussion, because here you say, I'm a Jamaican who reside in Utah and it's facing some serious injustice with the judicial system and was about to give up hope. But listening to you today has given me a light at the end of the tunnel. And that is why, Del Cita, this is why I do this, because like my song says, it's all in life. You keep your head up, you keep the stride. No time for living a lie. You just keep on moving until you get it right. That is the message, because I promise you, God on time. That was the message given to me. And there are people who are suffering in silence. And because they don't want people to take things out of context, they just don't bother tell anybody, because people will make fun of your shame. This is we are at a time or a space in life where even mental illness, and we're putting this in context, mental illness includes being tired. It includes being stressed. Anything that pretty much changes your ability to think clearly can be seen as a mental illness. Now, one would imagine, you can just imagine how crazy it is that people would make fun of you when you say to them, I am suffering from a lapse in judgment, a mental lapse for whatever reason. And we certainly, if you are Black, people think that you're not supposed to go and get therapy for slight mental issues, but it's really the ability to have conversations. So you see, where it comes to context matters, this is the mental room, and this is the space where you can say, I'm not okay, and we're going to find out what's wrong. Now, I can tell this, I'm not a psychologist, and I might, every problem that you come to me, I might tell you that you need Starlink and some KFC, but I promise you, coleslaw and a 6-piece fix everything. But they're going to say I'm joking this out to them, but I'm being serious with you. Identifying how serious it is. And then, Case, I see you. I don't know if you're trolling me or you're troubling me, but Kesu says she wants me to talk about hate speech and legislation. I might say that I think maybe they're bringing law on the books, so that when I speak, it will be deemed hate speech, so they can give me heavy fines. And if I don't pay the fine, they send me to prison. I don't know. It probably is me, but Well, like we said, God on time. So with mature consideration and knowing that any country you are in, there is something called a high court. If you are brave enough and with the support from the people around you in similar circumstances who are able to donate, who are able to pool resources together to fight a system that oppresses you. I always trust the justice system, and even Del Caesar says what she was feeling in terms of the judicial system. I will say to her as well, trust the justice system because it works. You just need to access it in the right way. And so Petra is saying, be encouraged, Del Caesar. And so you have a space in this world where if you find your people, I know my people are God's people. If you find your people, you will have an overwhelming spiritual strength and empowerment that will allow you to see things clearer, interpret life, take life one day at a time. And you pull from that strength and you find, I'm telling you, find the context, find what is it that I am supposed to do. Yeah, so you see that somebody says that your prime minister knew that the barrels were coming from the diaspora. That's why he didn't start the 1,000 duty free thing until after the Yuletide season. I must say this. West George says Socrates is responsible for bringing non-violent approach to the West. You believe in this approach, the non-violent approach? Of course, the non-violent approach is the only approach I believe in. People always thought that Martin Luther King, who is almost like a modern day Socrates, he took a non-violent approach while Malcolm X took a violent approach. And if you're the leader of opposition of Trinidad, you will take the violent approach and say, listen, shoot and ask question, bear your arms, every citizen must have a gun. This rhetoric, it just depends. But I think that life is sacred. I think that I can't think of a context where you're taking somebody's life, especially when we only have one and its finality. Violence only leads to that. And that would be one of the reasons why the United Nations have been voting unanimously, albeit Jamaica did not participate in the ceasefire on the Gaza Strip. And when I say the Gaza Strip, put it in context. I'm not talking about the world boss and Gaza nation. We're talking about the Middle East, that kind of thing. And so the non-violent approach will always be the best approach. And I don't believe in any other approach but non-violent. I believe that enriching the mind, giving knowledge to people, allowing them to participate in mature consideration can be the only way to foster improvement in society, especially a small society. Anybody who had a thought that who looked towards Singapore and saw the turnaround in Singapore, even Guyana now turning around because them enrich themselves with oil. And we just know that it is resources, and certainly in the Jamaican space, the mismanagement of resources is why people can't tap into a better life, and that's all they want. People, they say the devil find work for idle doers. My secret is never be idle, always find something to do. So even when if you want to call it the devil, I didn't say it, but even when people try to make you idle and put you on ice to sit and do nothing, get up and get up and do something. You can't make it if you don't try. And that's really what the concept is. But you have to teach yourself, and people have to teach you, and you have to get assistance and continued love and support and reinforcement so that you can do better. Big up yourself, Thug Boss. Adore, big up yourself. I'm now engaged in the chat rooms. Yes, I see you. Want to find a way over YouTube though. But we are on Reggae Global Radio. Shout out to everybody in the chat room who is keeping it alive. Sassy, I see you. And say Sassy says also in the justice system, they sometimes word the clauses so it is left open to interpretation of those who have the power. And that's the thing we're saying. When you leave something to interpretation, the context matters. And so one cannot just simply say, I'm interpreting it because I don't like you. And so I get the first opportunity I get is to punish you heavy handedly. There's something called generous interpretation, and the Constitution allows for generous interpretation. So when you never contemplate a particular thing like other jurisdictions, and you want to use a catch-all provision and squeeze a rectangle in a circle to fit it so that you are able to do what you're doing outside of your ability to do so. It is from a place of lack of context, a place of non-ideal justice, and from a degenerate humanitarian system. That's really what it is. Big up yourself, Faye. And so, yeah, so I'm hoping that by using Plato's cave, the allegory of the cave, that I was able to put into context how we are going to be going through the show and interpreting. Like, for instance, Kesu just says, hey, talk about the hate speech by the PM. The first thing I'm going to say to you is, guess what? We do not know the context upon which the hate speech law is going to be used. We do not know the reason why it's going to be put on the books. But we don't even know the definition of hate speech and if it accords with the Constitution, what our Constitution allows. Because if our Constitution says that certain things aren't legal, then if you are speaking out against things that are not legal in the context of the Constitution, can that be seen as hate speech because you put it into legislation? And I can tell you that the law, the Constitution is above all laws, but then they're changing the Constitution. So I don't necessarily know where we are with that. But that's something that is important to find out before we can have that conversation and speak more about it. So research will always being important. Yes, so that definitely is the most important thing when it comes to trying to understand context. Neem says no law in Jamaica without prejudice. Well, the law, I always say this, the laws in Jamaica are the laws in Jamaica. The interpretation of the laws is a different thing. And if we put it in context, does it apply to every Jamaican equally? The issues of bail, do they give bail to poor people or do they only give it to rich people? I can answer that. And bail is as of right, and the judges get a lot of criticism for actually exercising the right and giving bail. So that is of utmost importance when we look on things in that. Kay goes on to say we do not even know if he knows the context in which it was and that is exactly it. We oftentimes don't know if when laws are being passed, if lawmakers understand the context and why it is being passed. And legislation, whenever it is rushed, is always cause some kind of anxiety to the public. And new laws, the guinea pig version of it is that person will fall victim to a law that until the right person interpret it or put it before the court, they won't be able to find it unconstitutional, strike it out, and sometimes somebody will get a life sentence and they have to throw out that and substitute it for something or send people home. So we have to understand the context. And so even our justice system, we have to understand it so that if somebody goes to trial or somebody pleads guilty or somebody pleads no contest, should we be telling persons that somebody pled guilty when they said, I'm not contesting what people say? Or when people are found guilty and they put in an appeal, should we be saying that, oh, they are guilty without the final say from the highest court in the land, especially when the person has gone there? And whether or not the sub judice rule applies to only persons with dreadlocks and black skin, or is it just for a particular set of people? Just the things like that. What context do we use law? What context do we apply law, and to who we apply it to? And understanding that even in 2023, how to identify classism, how to identify racism, especially if you're from use the Jamaican context, it's a very tricky thing, because not every day you interface with the white black scenarios, but understanding that racism and classism nonetheless takes place by virtue of how people see themselves. And while we're not as dynamic as Trinidad and Tobago in terms of multiracial scenario and multi-religious scenarios, we still must identify classism and understand that there are two Jamaicas operating at the same time. So those are things to look at if we understand that. Yes, so that's what it is. Some of the questions I don't know what context they're being asked. Some Nima said, I win the biggest lawsuit against the AG and the Commissioner of Police without legal assistance. Congratulations to you. You should bring public awareness to persons. Yeah. Right. So that is pretty much, you see, we're settling in now. And so it is your thoughts and comments that I am looking for at this time. Trust me, by next week I'm gonna have a phone line open and we can have some dialogue. All right. You might send me a message and I might invite you, and we see what context you have a problem with, and see if we can flesh out those issues while we're on live, to see if you can take me through the allegory of the cave like Plato did with Glaucon, and if we can come to an understanding, whether it be rhetorical or whether we can agree to disagree, but giving snippets, explaining yourself and giving people context. What are the limitations when you are educating people? What is the difference in platform? When is it that when is it that you are free to express yourself without the repercussions of the powers that be, the elite? When your competitors dislike you and are in the position to punish you, how are you to conduct yourself when interpretation is created to ensure that you are destroyed? And then the context that God's people will always rise above the degenerate humanity, using the allegory of the cave. So language is everything, but one can understand that is the context. If you watch the whole show, you'll have an appreciation for the interpretation of material that has been around since time memorial. Certainly no human in existence right now, unless you are reincarnated, would have an appreciation and understanding of Plato's cave, Socrates, and even if we deal with Aristotle's metaphysics. And so these things are also on Google. So we don't always have to wait until Hollywood makes a movie for us to be educated by things that can be very valuable to us and can empower us to understanding. So when somebody comes and make empty promises to you, you look at the context and say, but is this doable? Is this something that you can do? Or is this just an empty promise, a lie that you will tell me? Especially, we know next year elections are coming up and people want to get these big paychecks in the Jamaican space. So they'll tell you a lie. But how does it benefit you? And I can tell, take it from somebody who love KFC. You can't give me 6 pieces of chicken and trick me. I can go get the chicken by myself. In fact, that's where we are in life now. The ability to get things done by yourself. Seeing how laughable it is that even when you are self-employed, the need to suppress you will be to try to destroy your business so that you can fall victim to having to beg your politicians and people in power for assistance. But what you do is know that there is, once you have life and once you are gifted, you can rise above anything. And I tell you, one of the things you can do when you are faced with hardship, you are to put your thoughts into words. I'm not telling everybody to go turn artist, but interpret what you need to do so you can have daily affirmations. And on another show, I'll tell you about myself meeting an angel on earth. Her name is Jean Patricia Ebanks. She's no longer among the living, but certainly she roams all the time. And her biggest advice to me was that all is well. And that's my affirmation. Is that no matter what life throws at you, all is well. So as a man who can't cook and probably can't even make drinks, when life gives you lemon, put it on your head top. Not going to send you to make lemonade because I don't want to poison anybody. But if life is giving you lemons, you might want to bag it and sell it at the stoplight. But don't sit down and do nothing. When life gives you lemons, it's evident that those who cause the lemons to come your way are just bitter souls, degenerate humanity, subhuman behavior, lost and restricted in Plato's cave, and are playing with justice with no concept of ideal justice. Just these are things that are just the reality. And so when you have your voice, don't let your voice die inside of you. To borrow from the words of, not the words, but my school motto. I went to Meadowbrook High School. So it says, let your light so shine. It would mean that you don't let nobody put your candle under a bed. Because certainly if my candle goes on that bed, says burn the house, I go burn down, and then they're going to charge me for arson. Because me now go out and me now go dim. And I'm trying to pass that on to my people, my followers, the love, the outpouring of love that I get. I'm trying to do that. Dr. EdTech says the allegory of the cave has one of the greatest lessons you can learn. That is so true. And that is why I have introduced this to the public, introduced this on Reggae Global Radio, where my show Context Matters will be here every Thursday, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern time. And you can catch me on my YouTube, Isaac Buchanan, as well as I stream on other platforms just so that you can see. And Reggae Global will be having some other announcements come next year. Trust me, bigger, better, badder. We are coming into your homes through your platforms, through your devices, to educate you, to give you a different context, a different way to interpret the world. That's what this is about. And I can tell you, you will not be disappointed. You will be a different human being with the knowledge that you will gain in this space. And at the same time, here's what I can tell you for sure. Me have some song. Me have all kind of song. And here's what you need to do. Yeah, here's what you do. I have music, and I'll be sharing it. I will make space for other music that I've heard from artists in Jamaica who make music that doesn't have the platform to have persons hear it. And I'll be a conduit for that because there is greatness in the Jamaican space. So if you're a young artist and you have music that is palatable, that has a message that when one person, if it even changes the life of one person, and the message I'm talking about is not the Boogie Yaga, is the spiritual enlightenment and spiritual enrichment, the feeling of goodness. That is the type of music. If you're there, reach out to me. We're changing how people get access and opportunity. That's what we want for our people, and that's certainly what it's here for. And I just want to just send a big thank you to the Reggae Global Radio family. Even yesterday, Ed played my song twice. He played the original and he played the acoustic, and it was requested and it was well received. And listen, Joanna Marie, I want to thank you for giving me this platform, for giving me this opportunity, for making me a part of the Reggae Global family, and giving me this platform in a space where the cave that I was in, shackled, was trying to suppress and oppress, and giving me my voice, allowing me to keep my voice, because I have a lot to say and I have a lot to share, to inspire and to ensure that people know that second chances, third chances, fourth chances, as long as you're alive, the chances and the opportunities are endless, as it is written and given by God. Life is given to you by God, and let no man take that from you. And that's what this is about. I want to send a big thank you to Will Rattigan. He has given me a lot of knowledge and also platform. Shout out to Andre as well. I know you're listening, and I know you don't have to cringe. Nobody have to cringe. I have nothing to say that will shock the nation, but to give knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So I'm saying those special shout outs to those people. You know, I'm always gonna big up Big Youth. I have to big up my father, because I tell you, if I was ever Simba, Mufasa is still with me, and Mufasa has protected me, and that is what life is about. That when you are from greatness, you know, it's easier to live up to your name. Isaac the Great One. And big up to my mother. So like this is my Grammy speech, but shout out to my mother, because the family that prays together and stays together is always going to overcome any adversity that comes. Much shout out to my siblings as well, but a special shout out to Zambo, my brother and best friend, who is always supportive, and my nieces too. A special Zara can't burn me out. I know you're looking. My nose hairs are clipped, so you have nothing to say to me. And yeah, and of course the listen, the Reggae Global family, the all the people who support me on every platform, the TikTok generation, Instagram, Facebook. I'm calling them all out. Everywhere I'm live and everywhere you're seeing me on YouTube, I appreciate you. And this show is called Context Matters. But just like in America, where they had the Black Lives Matter movement, here's why context matter. Because you're going to go on a journey with me to know that you matter. And when you wake up knowing that you matter, we can tackle the issues and interpret context just because you know you matter. And if you matter, context will matter. That's where I am. And yeah, money guns on all platforms. Big up yourself. And yeah, so we are winding down for this show. As I said, I'm learning how to use the technology. Trust me, you see when I get it right, it's gonna be epic. I promise you. And we might get stage show performance and a lot of visual and dynamics to put things in context to assist us. And the rhetoric, it's going to be very interesting and invigorating. That's where we are right now. But I tell you, this is my first show where I flagship and I have to deal with all of the technicalities that persons. I've seen persons do it, and Ratigan do it so well. I used to make fun of him on his show when I'm on his show on Saturdays, and remind him of Starlink. But he's gonna get Starlink, so I won't have to make fun of him. But how important these things are when you understand the technicalities. And we'll be talking. I'll be bringing everybody in and inviting. When you're batting me up in the comments, I'm just gonna send you the link, and you're gonna come talk to me. And I want to see your face and see if you're big and bad, that kind of thing. But we're gonna always agree to disagree. One of the most important things is that we're gonna learn and we're gonna get better together. And the support, listen, Kesu, you're so right. The support is strong. There are some people like Miss B. Anytime you pop up in the comments, I see you. I just know, because Miss B know to be seen. She knows how to be seen. I must tell you that. And yeah, my peoples, just know what's going on and they're doing it right. And I love that. Yeah, and Sid Iceman, you're so right. Being a voice for the voiceless, but making the voiceless have a voice, because I know you're sitting in spaces and you're seeing things happening, and you know what your morality is. You know when something don't feel right. We are the generations of we want justice, but we now know how to interpret what we mean when we say we want justice. We are now putting it into context. Yes, Artens, Faye, big up yourself. My daughter won. All of those things. And yeah, I am using this platform to introduce Jamaica in a different context. My mission and my mandate is to give second opportunities to the Jamaican youth, and rehabilitating young people who, you'd be surprised, they might not have criminal convictions, but they're treated like criminals because of where they come from. The education system is not educating them, because they're boys who are seen as a menace to society. And how do we change that narrative? No Jamaican left behind. That's the mandate. And watch the growth. Make a note of it. I'm seeing. I'm grateful for the interaction on all platforms. But that is definitely what we're doing. And as we're coming to the end of this show on Reggae Global Radio, it has been an exciting one for me. I made it through, and that's what it's about. So as you leave, as you go where you are, I invite you, use Google. Everything I said, if you don't even agree, the starting point is Google. Plato is a Greek philosopher. He was the student of Socrates. He wrote in his works, his thesis, The Republic. is very fitting now, because Jamaica wants to be a republic. Well, Plato spoke about the republic and all that, all the pitfalls in idealism and the allegory of the cave, I'm submitting to you. Jamaica is the cave, and the people in it are shackled. The people are misguided. The people needs to, as Bob Marley say, emancipate themselves from mental slavery, understanding that every Jamaican is a star. There's no reason for poverty to take so many of us when there's so few of us in the world, and we are going to change that together. And this, my people, was Context Matters, and you are rocking with the best. Isaac the Great. Blessings. And stick around, where the show might have ended on Reggae Global, but certainly that's going to be it for the YouTube as well. But definitely, if you're on the other platforms, you can stick around, because I want to know your thoughts and comments, and send me messages. You can follow my music on Isaac Buchanan, Isaac.official on Instagram, and follow me on YouTube. Same thing, Isaac Official or Isaac Buchanan. And yeah, we are definitely gonna turn things around. Come with me into 2024. This is Isaac Buchanan signing out. Context Matters. Love on you. Big up on yourself. Yes, sir.